Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to this ethical webinar on micromobility being organized with DEKRA. Before I introduce to you my brilliant panelists, I would like to go through some logistics. You're all muted, and we would kindly ask you to pose the questions that you may have during the presentations and also in the Q&A at the end using the chat box, so I can receive them and read them to the panelists. That's one. And second, I have to inform you that we are recording the webinar. So then we're going to send you a link, which you can, of course, access again and watch it online. So I hope everyone is fine with this. The structure of the webinar is that I'm going to give you a short introduction on micromobility and some thoughts on that. And then I'm going to pass the microphone to our panelists. First, let me welcome my panelist, Dr. Kerim Kalal. Welcome from DEKRA. He's the managing director of DEKRA Digital. Also welcome Odysseas Raptis. He's the CEO of eTrikala from the municipality of the city of Trikala. And also Ricardo Vitorino. Welcome, Ricardo, from Smart City. He's from UBWare and he's manager of Smart Cities Research and Innovation. So you will all have the opportunity to present one after the other. We will try to keep our presentations short so that we have the time to answer questions and have a good discussion on micromobility. We are going to be discussing not only how safe it is, but we are going to see other aspects as well. What is it out there? How public authorities use micromobility or regulate micromobility, and should it be regulated, and so on. So, sorry, it's a number of issues we are touching. You can already see my first slide. I am the moderator. My name is Joanna Zanidaki. I'm responsible for innovation and deployment at Ertico ITS Europe. So let me start by telling you who we are and what we do at Ertico before I go into the topic. Next slide, please, Julia. And thank you to my colleague Julia, who is helping me with the slides. So we are a public-private organization on intelligent transport systems. That's what ITS is. So ITS stakeholders from 8 sectors that you see them there. They come together and we all come together around the table, and we work on innovation and thought leadership with regards to ITS and how to promote the benefits of ITS for the entire society. We have 120 members. As you see, when I'm talking about 8 sectors, it ranges from public authorities to research to ministries and cities, service providers, traffic and transport industry, of course the users, of course the automotive OEMs, and mobility network operators. We know, and all our partners know, that innovation cannot happen with one partner only. It happens when you put all the different aspects of mobility together and you work towards, innovative solutions. The next slide, please, and that's the last slide I have on Ertico. Ertico, as I said, brings these 8 mobility sectors together with a vision of making mobility smart, sustainable, and safe. And it's very important that these 3 are together. We're going to discuss micromobility. It touches on smart, on sustainable, and safe, of course. And safety has been a priority #1 in mobility, and it will continue to be so. So we will be discussing, if you go, Julia, to the next slide, we will be discussing micromobility. And I have this slide. It's from my colleague working on Elbiten project that Odysseas from the city of Trikala is going to also mention. We see micromobility including, of course, light electric vehicles. And you see here 4 categories: electric micro scooters, bicycles and e-bikes, 2- and 3-wheeled open electric vehicles, and 4-wheeled closed electric vehicles. It is a definition that it's not exhaustive. More types of vehicles are added. It's a hot topic, let's say. It's being more and more developed. It has the discussion on micromobility is very much related to types of ownership. You have private sharing, short-term rental, and short-term again, but with fixed stations or free floating, and then corporate sharing vehicles. These vehicles transfer people, or they do deliveries, and so on. There is a potential that micromobility reduces emissions and noise and improves urban environments if short trips by car are replaced or transferred to such micro and light electric vehicles. But this is something that we claim, those who work on this area. We are still collecting data to prove it. So, Julia, I think there's something wrong with the screen. Yeah. And I don't know if Odysseus is going to talk about it. It is important that we prove that, but from the data that we have already, we see that the people who are those who are using micromobility, they would have otherwise walked. So we don't have so much data proving that they are replacing the vehicle, but we are working on it. So next slide, please. Some general thoughts and questions that I want to pose to you, the participants, and also to my brilliant panelists. We are going to okay, the definition, first of all, so on your right hand, it's shared and non-shared. It's e-powered usually, and it's short trip use, because usually it's 75% under 4 kilometers per hour. Now, the definition, does it include bicycles? That is a question that we should be looking into as well. Usually bicycles don't fall under the umbrella of micromobility unless the bicycle is fitted with a navigation device or any kind of sensor, and then it's considered ITS empowered. But of course, bicycles share many aspects with the other micromobility vehicles, or those that we usually put in that umbrella, under that umbrella, with our eyes closed. When we talk about the road use, the reserved lanes, the access to pedestrian areas, parking, security, legal aspects, or sharing schemes, and integration with mobility as a service offerings. Bicycles are very much involved in this discussion. So I personally put them, bicycles, under this umbrella. Now, what is also important is to see the infrastructure and the regulatory environment. And that's where we start talking about curb and street and sidewalk management, and how cities try to manage this plethora of micromobility vehicles that suddenly they were faced with in the last 2 years. Now, another point is access to intelligent data and analytics tools, and access to intelligent data that these vehicles have to data, and these vehicles also create data, and they can emit, I don't know, GPS positions and so forth. So this is a wealth of data that we can be using in managing mobility as a whole. Another point is slow and safe street policies, prioritizing pedestrian, cyclists, and small vehicles. These are the policies that some cities choose to adopt and look into, and some other cities and urban environments are lagging behind. Also very, very important, geofencing and so on. And of course, the last point in this slide is trust in this shared or non-shared micromobility, and how this is related to social distancing that we all learned what it means now with the pandemic of COVID-19. Because up until recently, some months ago, we were talking about safety and mobility, and we meant incidents and accidents. We never, or yeah, I think we never thought of social distancing as part of safety. And this brings me to the next slide, where it's this perception of safety that is also important. It's not only how safe it is, it's how safe this mode of transport is. So we take it for granted almost that bicycles and scooters and mopeds are perceived as safer than being safer than cars, but are they in reality? Then also safety lies in the surrounding of the hosting infrastructure. Maybe this mode of mobility is safe, but is the infrastructure really helping in persuading the user that is safe and in ensuring the safety of moving with such a vehicle? And it's not only the user and the infrastructure, it's also other modes of mobility, such as the vehicle and the car. And how do these perceive or see, quote unquote, this micromobility vehicles, such as scooters, for example. And I was reading that the UK is currently thinking of making it a requirement to have a micro scooter driving license, and many cities are looking into protective helmets. So, you know, enforcement by the police on regulations when they are there is very important. And also rules are not very clear, and they vary between countries and also within countries. So maybe shall we be discussing harmonized approach or guidance, or shall it be part of the SAMs, on the sustainable urban mobility plans that are being issued by the Commission? Just thoughts. And let me take you to my next slide, because we mentioned vulnerable road users, and they have been traditionally, again, seen as pedestrians. The pedestrians are the vulnerable road users. And now more and more we understand that it's the users of micromobility vehicles that joined this group of vulnerable road users. And we should also be seeing who these users of micromobility vehicles are, because I was looking into a couple of surveys. One of them was by Como UK, conducted last year between June and July, and they were looking at the age groups and the gender and so on, and they were making a point that in the UK that there is a gender gap, a gender equity issue. So they see that it's mostly men. It's 50%, 58% men, and then it's a low percentage of women. Of course, in the Netherlands, where I live, and Germany, is completely, they are an exception. But it is usually men that prefer to ride these kind of micromobility vehicles. Although bicycles are also preferred very much by women. But I'm just making a point that we should see factors such as social or cultural expectations from women, when women are traditionally taking care of transferring the kids, taking them to the activities, or going for grocery shopping, or going for these kind of tasks. And the design of the micromobility vehicles are not really designed thinking in these terms. Or also from personal experience, biking in the Netherlands, it's raining a lot. When I arrive in the office, let's put it, I'm in a less advantageous position, how I look like under the rain has fallen on me, than my male colleagues in the office. So these are aspects that are also important. that we can touch upon in this discussion if you like. And if you go to the next slide, Julia, because I don't want to take all the time for me. Let me take you to this slide where we're talking about benefits and requirements. Business cases are important. We have to see the win-win-win, the operators, the urban environments, and the citizens, and how the citizens can be confident that the micromobility is answering their needs. And we have to really raise awareness, understand and enhance the benefits that we see already, that there's complementarity with the public transport for the last mile travel, that there is this possible reduction in short distance car use, and checking the numbers. And as I said, Elvit and the project that we are running with our partners is doing that as well. And also, as I mentioned, the potential of overcrowding in public transport for short trips, where social distancing is an issue, especially in times of pandemics. So solid business cases for usage schemes should be something that we should be working on, that give this trust and this confidence to the user. Parking management and urban clutter. So when micromobility vehicles are not working anymore, they cannot be thrown in the pavements and left and right. Regulation, who can use them, where, traffic laws, how they integrate into the entire mobility system, and of course, safety first and last, the vehicle design, the road lane design, the rider safety, and the non-rider safety. So with this, I go to my next slide and I finish my presentation. I hope I gave you some food for thought, some food for discussion. Again, I would ask our participants to send us any questions, any points they wish in the chat box. I'm going to be reading them afterwards. And I wish to pass the microphone or the floor to Dr. Kerim Galal from Dekra Digital. He's the managing director, and the floor is yours. I'll switch off my camera. Thank you, Kerim.
Thank you very much, Johanna, and thank you very much for having me on this panel. Thanks to this great partnering that we have with Etico, and for you providing this platform as usual to discuss mobility issues. First of all, a few sentences only to Dekra and Dekra Digital. Well, you know that Dekra is a testing and inspection certification company. We do ensure safety on the road, at work, and at home for in 60 countries with 50,000 employees. So this has been our mission now for 95 years. And of course, we're also transitioning this to the future topics, future mobility solutions. And therefore, we founded Dekra Digital 2 years ago to kind of concentrate on those data-driven, technology-driven activities to kind of, again, ensure safety on the road, at work, and at home. And the vision of Dekra Digital is to innovating safety. And we do this by building digital services and lead the digital transformation and open innovation for Dekra, again, in order to increase safety in the everyday life. And we do that very closely with our partners, of course. So talking about micromobility, thanks for the great introduction to this topic, Johanna. And I think you pointed out a lot of the topics already that you will also see in my presentation, and that forms also our position on this. Actually, we accompanied the whole industry starting already in August 2018, when I personally was first time in Los Angeles to attend and see kind of the first scooter providers on the road there. And from then on, we really quite closely worked together with many of the scooter providers, again, in our role in order to ensure a safe ecosystem for this new mobility solution. What we saw all together, and just as a reminder, I think we all know that very well, but the adoption rate of e-scooters has been tremendously quick in comparison also to other new introduced forms of mobility. I think the growth was really exceptional in the way how scooter companies kind of conquered the world in so many countries, and that even before, and that specifically before the Corona situation. And of course, it's created challenges for the whole ecosystem, and I will come to them in a second. We will probably get in the discussion later on that as well, talking about the Corona and COVID situation, how this has affected and impacted the e-scooter industry, And I think you see that very well on the right graphic that we show here, where you see that the activity in apps of the big scooter providers has really dropped in usage by sometimes 50% in comparison month to month. And of course, this has slowed down the whole industry. But first hypothesis from my perspective, this will regain momentum. But I think we will have a new start of the e-scooter industry and the mobility usage. But I think we have the time now again to breathe a bit and learn from what we have seen in the first introductions in the different countries across the world. So what have we learned, taking a view rather on the challenges of things? That we had issues with e-scooter usage, and being it unsafe riding behavior, being it too many people using the same scooter, being simply also too young riders using the scooters. There was yet no sufficient integration with public transit in our eyes. We have experienced vandalism. Of course, if we kind of all go through this 1 year, 1.5 years since introduction, this has been taking place, speeding, and Johanna, you pointed that out, we still have quite individual governance or even individual regulations on the scooter industry across different countries. Coming to that also in a second. And we do still lack, in our view, infrastructure in the cities. Simply, the cities were not ready to be taken over by e-scooter providers. And then there was country by country a discussion as to where are the e-scooter providers allowed to drive. Is it on the sideways? Is it on the streets? Which is the limit of speed? And I think this has taken a bit the positive momentum of having a nice addition to short distance riding in cities, and kind of getting a bit away, and the initial idea getting away from cars and having a sustainable solution for small trips. And I think this all has distracted us then from the initial cause of introducing micromobility. What we think is that we can help in really making it a safer ecosystem and something that is working well. And so we sat together with a few of the e-scooter providers, and we discussed with them on the base, of course, of the experience that we also have as an engineer-driven company dealing with safety, into how can we make this whole ecosystem and integrate it across the different stakeholders, from authorities, municipalities, scooter providers, users, non-users. How can we improve the level of safety and also sustainability? And therefore we put together the micromobility safety standard. It's a de facto standard that we have put out, and comprising all the experiences again that we have gained and collected throughout the last 1.5 to 2 years. So we have identified 8 different areas where we do put out requirements and recommendations as to what should be ensured, either by the scooter provider or the municipalities. And so we put in 120 of those requirements. So the aim again is to make scooter sharing safe for public to use, and making it a nice addition to traffic and mobility in cities. And of course, it should also be a tool and helpful for municipalities, how they can regulate the micromobility space. Because what we experience there is that we talk to many cities, and each city is trying to come up with their own solutions and talking then to each other. But this is, of course, just out of limited sense then in this sense. And of course, also the big scooter providers would be happy if there is a bigger alignment, so that we can help find same regulations city by city, and we don't need to adapt everywhere where we are. And of course, also find ways of integrating micromobility sharing into existing public transit. So I'm not gonna go through all the different 8 categories. Of course, anybody who is interested in learning more about it, we can discuss that later or reach it out in person. But it deals with, for example, of course, it starts with the vehicle design, the technical design. So what we have done is we looked at all the different national regulations concerning the vehicle design, and we kind of found a way that we as DEKRA, and also referring again the probability of accidents, what we would recommend, and this goes sometimes or very often across or on top of national regulations. We know, of course, the German regulation quite well, and this is on quite high level. But we also said if we comply with this standard, then it needs to be in a very high level of technical design. The same goes for different certifications and requirements concerning production, delivery, and assemble. Also how we have put out recommendations to authorities talking about insurances, what should we do in terms of infrastructure. So again, we learn from country to country, learn from the experience, and then we put out our thoughts, what would make best sense. And Johanna, you also spoke about data and IT security. Just imagine some scooter fleet gets hacked, and it's so easy to kind of simply put every scooter on brake, and then suddenly so many people that are riding a scooter of one of the providers are in a brake mode. We don't want to imagine what would be the outcome of this. So we just have to make sure that those things are dealt with consistently. Training in user behavior. I think also in the car industry, 80 to 90% of accidents today happen due to user behavior and driving behavior. And it's not only the speeding, but it's also the appropriate speed in different areas where people are riding. Again, deployment is a big issue in combination with maintenance of the scooters, because now we have regulations for scooters type approvals to kind of put them once on the street, put them once into action. But how do we make sure that the scooters are also 3 months in, still in that stage where they should be if you kind of take your daughter and allow her to take that scooter for a ride? So I would like to have 2 daughters, and I would really like to make sure that somebody also takes care that they are in a state where I do feel confident that it's fine for her to take a ride with it. And of course, talking also about sustainability, the recycling of scooter batteries. Usually the battery has a longer endurance than the scooter mechanical parts itself. So, but also there we need to have a clear view on how this should be organized. And simply the whole industry, it's not put on anybody in the industry because it's simply a young industry, but we can learn a lot from kind of the established industries like the car industry, the motorbike industry. So we can simply adapt and transition a few of those thoughts. And I think this is a good way to do. Finally, we have started a campaign together with DVR, Deutsche Verkehrsrat in Germany now, to kind of also put a few additional proposals forward to authorities, to the municipalities, in order again to increase safety for e-scooters. So for example, and they go beyond again like the necessity in current regulation. So we for example, we say it makes sense to have mandatory turn signals on the scooters so that you really see somebody turning left or right. The minimum age of users should be increased to 15 years, and it needs to have some sort of a test certificate. Doesn't need to have a big test, but I think we see that alone in the city of Berlin and in 10 months time, the amount of accidents happening was 350 accidents, and 10 to 15% of them severe. And I think this is just the number that were reported, so we don't know how many really happened. And again, we do really encourage new forms of transportation, but then if we do them, we should do them right. Visibility of scooters needs to be increased. There needs to be unique contacts for authorities and police, fines for driving on the footpath. We should also be open to rethink infrastructure in cities, also in combination then with bicycle traffic, which is also, of course, increasing. And at least during the Corona situation, I think the personal usage or the private usage of cars and scooters probably has increased, but not in the shared yet. Designated parking zones will put a lot of positive momentum to the discussion of scooters being just thrown on the sidewalks, and anchoring different perspectives and training. So you get the message. We kind of put a few of those thoughts forward, and some kind of food for thought that we also thought about. How can we get people to to drive more cautious? If we could get the scooter providers from rental rates according to distance instead of time, because today, of course, time is counted. People pay per minute, and if we remove that obstacle in terms of it's not better to be quick there, but it's good to be safe there. and maybe this can also increase the safety then and reduce the probability of accidents. Last but not least, our micromobility standard has gained quite some positive momentum. I think we are engaged now with a lot of different cities. We have presented at the Safer City event in Lisbon last year, October, and also participated in the ITF study. So I think we are really looking forward to engage in this conversation now and facilitate. As usual, we are a neutral party, so we don't have any self-interest in there. We just simply want to be a safety partner for the micromobility industry. This is maybe from me, and again, looking forward to any interactions and of course to the questions coming forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kerim. Just out of curiosity, you mentioned that the minimum age should be increased to 15 years. What is the minimum age now for the use of e-scooters in Germany?
At least in Germany, it's 14.
It's 14. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, interesting. Okay, thank you very much, Kerim. I would like to pass the floor to the municipality of Trikala, to Odysseas Raptis, who is the CEO of eTrikala. And Kerim was mentioning that cities were not ready for micromobility. What is the situation for Trikala? Because Trikala is not a typical Greek city, is kind of a pioneer in many things. So there you go. Odysseas, the floor is yours. Odysseas, we cannot, or at least I cannot hear you. No.
Okay, I think it's okay now. All right, thank you very, very much for the introduction, Joanna. And thank you very much for inviting Trikala, a small city in the middle of Greece, to, let's say, present what is happening in a small city, what could be happening in a small city regarding e-services. The first, I would like to begin saying that eTrikala SA, the company that I'm managing, is a municipal enterprise. 99% belongs to the municipality and 1% from the shares belongs to the local Chamber of Commerce. And of course, we're serving the municipality. We're dealing the municipal council for projects, for ideas, and for implementing strategies. We have a very young mayor, who is a cyclist, a fanatic one. He's leading all the Greek mayors. He's the president of the organization for all Greek mayors, and he's, I believe, the only politician in Athens that when he goes down to his office in Athens, he's circulating from ministry to ministry or to the parliament with an electric bike. So in Trikala, the city of Trikala is about 81,000 inhabitants. But if we count to the suburbs, to the region, it's 130,000 people. Trikala is serving the agricultural area that surrounds the city. So we're a servicing city. So we have many, many inhabitants from the suburbs that are entering the city for shopping, for services, for amusement. That's why it's very important for us what we call actually the last mile, because somebody is approaching Trikala with a car or with a public means of transportation. But the problem is coming up to the city when they want to, let's say, visit from a shop to another shop, or from a bar to another bar, or from an organization to another organization. Winter time, we are operating the biggest Christmas event in Greece. So over 1 million people are visiting us during 40 days of operation of the park. And Trikala is considered to be a pilot city for many European projects. This is something that we would like to arise. And I believe that after 15 years working closely with many European partners and of course organizations like ERTICO or other ones, we believe that Trikala is the perfect place to test the technology. And that will be my presentation, just to arise questions in your mind, how we have tested and what are the possible results of a few European projects that we're currently running. Julian, if you're kind enough, the next slide, please. Julia, thank you. What we're doing in Trikala with the experience of circulating small electric vehicles, 3 wheels or 4 wheels, or electric bicycles, or organizing now, the last development is that organizing deliveries with drones, or organizing the circulation on a standard route for automated vehicles, vehicles with no driver, with driverless buses, providing a proper service, a public service. What we're trying to do is to test what are the reactions of the people, the reaction of the users, and finally to discuss with the government and to decide, not to decide, actually to negotiate how we can facilitate all these new technologies. Of course, the main motive is that there are zero emissions. We would like in, let's say, a few decades from now, to declare Trikala city as a zero emission city, even the downtown, but why not the whole city? So that's why we're open and we're operating projects that are coming to facilitate the last mile and the everyday living standards of our inhabitants. Please, the next slide. I will go through the projects that, for example, the Elvitan project, we have been supplied by the European community, by the organizers of the project, with 4 wheels and 3 wheels electric vehicles, small electric vehicles. We will present later on in details. And we have 2 options. I mean, 3-wheel vehicles were the delivery shops, just to make small deliveries in the city. And the 4 wheels, we have provided that to tourists or to Trikalians, I mean, inhabitants of Trikala. And we were counting and we were calculating the speed, we were counting the kilometers, and we were counting the time of driving. And then we had a questionnaire just to understand their level of satisfaction, or if they have had probably problems by circulating with the vehicle. The Cities for People, another project, it gave us the opportunity, provided us the opportunity to discuss with different groups of people and to co-create sustainable solutions to the local challenge of urban mobility. And I will show you later what was the results on it. The AVINT is a national project that, what I told you before, we had operated 2 years ago the biggest European worldwide project with automated buses driverless, without a driver, in the very downtown. And now we're building up a new route that is going to be from the downtown to the bus station, which is located 4 kilometers outside the city. That is going to be for public use. That is going to be a service, let's say, option, and that will bring us to the future, meaning that can we drive, can we be safe on that, can they provide the proper services today served by normal minibuses. Next slide, please. The Harmony is the latest project that we are running, which I mean, in Trikala, we will operate drones to deliver to the suburbs, I mean villages around Trikala, medicaments to the elderly, mainly people, and we will evaluate the results of it. Since they are not isolated, but there are sometimes, they have a local pharmacy, of course, but they have sometimes they are asking sometimes during the day for a specific medicament, and the pharmacy is out of stock. So instead of waiting for the other day, 24 hours, most of the times 24 hours, to be delivered the medicament, we will use the drones just to create a new service, just to create a safer service, and just to create a faster service to the elderly people, delivering the medicament to the local pharmacies, and the pharmacies will provide that to the, let's say, person that needs it. The show is the biggest European project that is now we are now on board. There are 13 European states, and is going to detect, apart from the circulation of automated buses, automated vehicles, the on-demand delivery, the on-demand service, or changing the route if we have an accident, if we have a roadwork, if we have incidents on the street. That is going to be the big experiment in Trikala. Desmos is another project that is dealing with technology, IT technology, that assisting people in big events to detect and find, for example, their children. Or if we have a big incident, just to alert the people that are involved and are responsible to act on it, to alert them and provide the proper service in a very fast time. Next slide, please. So let's go. LV10. LV10 that I presented before, you can see the three-wheel electric vehicles or the four-wheel electric vehicles provided by Keybridge from Switzerland. Up to date, we have operated 1,000 trips for quadricycles and 1,000 trips by tricycles in Trikala. 1,000 reports have been collected, and now we're in the stage that we're evaluating the results of all this action. But I have to admit, and I have to say that the city has welcomed those. Professionals that they were using the three wheels electric vehicles are enthusiastic because the small size and the safety that provides the three cycles vehicle were very important for their operation. The four cycle is one seat vehicle, and of course, for the COVID-19, it's perfect. But we have noticed that when you want to make tourism, or you want to sightseeing, or you want to make to, let's say, go for shopping in different places inside Trikala, it's a disadvantage that it is just that is one person per vehicle. Of course, other uses like disabled, like elderly, could facilitate this, but I have not the definite answer, that I have not up to date the final result, because now we're evaluating the report that we have already collected. Next slide, please. So the LV10, what brought in Trikala? It was the first charging station. They were electric vehicles, so we have installed initially one, now we have 4 electric charging points, and actually we are educating, let's say, people how to use. We're checking other issues like how we can abort from vandalism, but generally speaking, people in Trikala, they were using the charging stations, and they were happy that in 4 points inside the city, they could charge the vehicle in case that they were out of electricity. The plan is to increase the data collection. The plan is to identify the users' routes and integrate all these and all the rest of the results from other projects that I have mentioned before to the SAMP. Now, Trikala is building up the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan according to the results that we have collected and data that we are still collecting, as to provide, let's say, a model that it is, of course, it is, let's say, modern, if I could say that, or it is targeting to the zero emission results that we expect to have in our city. Next slide, please. The harmony, I have explained you, we have drones, we have, I mean, next month we're going to have the drones, and we have to carry medicines and to fly over the city and deliver those medicines to 3 villages around the city with a maximum distance of 4.5 kilometers from the takeoff point to the landing point. That is very interesting to my understanding, because that came out now with the pandemic of COVID. It could serve individuals, it could serve people that are scaring, it could serve people that they feel safe just to be not isolated, just not to be, let's say, involved in everyday actions, probably being afraid of the COVID and the pandemic that we're facing today. Next slide, please. So as I told you before, this is the map, let's say, the Trikala, you can see Trikala down left, and then are the villages that we intend to fly. We have already established 3 villages with a landing place near to the pharmacy shop. And hopefully, if everything goes okay, we can extend this to other 2 or more villages. 4.5 kilometers is the flying capacity today of a semi-professional. I could easily say professional, but professional drone is something that has to do with army and all these issues. But semi-professional is not the drone that we're flying for amusement or for video, for recording our memories, but it's semi-professional. But unfortunately, the distance that we have today to fly is 4.5 kilometers to go and 4.5 kilometers to come back. That is a small disadvantage. Next slide, please. The cities for people, as I told you before, we have learned from different groups of Trikala that we have negotiated with them their demands, their mobility demands for a year. And we have finalized that for example, for people with disabilities that they cannot walk, then they have a wheelchair. We have supplied them with small electric, as you can see in the photo, small electric apparatus that transforms that manual-driven wheelchair to an automatic one. And they can make easy riders. They're riding very easy. They could visit many, let's say, they could expand their time spending on the street. And I think it was safer to run on the street instead of running on the pedestrian, on the sideways, or only to pedestrian streets. Next slide, please. So what else has been, let's say, best practice? It was that people were asking from us to place in a downtown, and we have done it, small lockers. We have placed the lockers there, and actually people, they have used that a lot. Instead of carrying all their, let's say, shopping around the city from point to point, they were located in the city, they were using the lockers, and that's why they had not the need of the car. So they were collecting, and they had to store their goods in the info point in those urban lockers, and then to the end of the day, they had to approach one time with their car the info point to collect from the locker their goods and go back to their village or to their home. Next slide, please. So the challenges of micromobility. We believe that we can have very positive results where we have used all these e-cars, e-bicycles, e-applications. We had a very positive feedback. The market has reacted positively, and the policymakers that are trying now to build up as I told you before, the urban mobility plan, the sustainable urban mobility plan, are taking into their consideration, in their account, are taking all these necessities that are coming today. For example, parking spaces, for example, charging points, for example, new and separate lanes. If the vehicle, we got bicycles with 750 watts that were overspeeding. So probably they're going to design, and we're going to use for higher speed than the 4 kilometers per hour, that's the normal speed of electric bikes, for better and faster vehicles like the mopeds, like the, let's say, four-wheel cars, like whatever will come from the industry in the future. So DATAS is something that we're collecting, we were collecting, and we will collect, feeding up the plans that we are doing here, and actually organizing meetings with the Minister of Transportation in Athens. We're providing them with data, actual data, not data coming from statistic models, but from everyday living situations in Trikala. So we believe that, of course, we can assist them to design the city of the future on a very safer mode. Of course, exchange of data in between cities is the main issue for all European projects, and that is going to also assist to build up better cities, cleaner cities for the future. Please, next slide, please. The city of Trikala, as I told you, it's a test bed. We are happy to announce it. I told you that the municipal council is always positive, is thinking positively regarding the futuristic e-services or e-applications or let's say, modifications that we are doing in our everyday life, because we have, they are trusting us because we have proved that we're facilitating the everyday living of standards. I believe that e-services now with the pandemic has been a big issue. At least Greece is starting to work on e-government applications. So I believe that now is the time that we can solve the last mile problem that I believe that all cities around the world are facing. How? By using small electric vehicles, mopeds, bicycles, independent small cars, as to facilitate their every day in the downtown circulation for meeting the government, or meeting the shopping, or meeting friends, or amusement during the evening. Next slide, please. And final one, I think. Yes, this is the final one. We are operating a hub. All this is coming out from the Gisemi hub, as we name it in Trikala. So where we are, we have people, youngs, that they have the idea, and we're supporting them. And now Ertico will support us on this a lot. And we believe that to be better, we have to be international. We have to be, let's say, operating in a multi-companies environment, and multi-countries environment, just to understand and give the better solutions under this cooperation. Next and final slide is my sincere word of thanks for listening me, and I'm here to answer to any questions might arise. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, always a pleasure. Let me also put on my camera, Odysseia. No, it's very. You gave us a very good picture of Trikala and how you go about the different projects and the innovation that is taking place in this small city in the middle of Greece. It was very interesting that you mentioned, and I know it from Elviten as well, that you are receiving the information from the citizens through questionnaires. You're using co-creation. I know that you're still collecting the data, but what is the feeling of the citizens in the city with all these things that you're doing, especially with micromobility? Because being Greek, I know micromobility is not in our, let's say, DNA. Let's put it like, we're not Dutch. We don't go to everywhere with a bike. So that would be interesting to know.
You have to keep in mind that in Trikala, every person, every inhabitant over the age of 3 years old or 4 years old owns a bike. It's a city like in Holland, as you said before, that we are running on bikes. So now that if you provide us with electric bikes, bikes that they have other capabilities, bikes that are giving data, they are looking enthusiastic of using them. To give you the last, let's say, development, the Elviten project was the last week that we had to withdraw and return back to the European community, which is a problem, and I would like here to arise it, because we had somebody bought those, we had them for 2 years here, and now they're gone back, I don't know where, but let's overpass it. So last week that we had to withdraw all these vehicles, we still have people calling the IPO point asking when they're going to be back. Okay, so this means that they have liked, they have used that, and they have facilitated their everyday living standards.
Oh, that's great. That's good to know. Okay, thank you very much, Odysseas.
You're welcome.
Let me pass the microphone to Ricardo Vitorino from UbiWare, another partner of Ertico. Ricardo Vitorino is, as I said, manager for smart cities and research and innovation. Ricardo, the microphone is yours. Tell us about what UbiWare thinks and does in micromobility. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Joanna and Ertico, for this wonderful opportunity. My name is Ricardo Vitorino. Thank you for introducing us. I work at UbiWare. UbiWare is a Portuguese software development SME. We are based in Portugal, and in normal conditions, we would love to welcome all of you to our lovely offices close to the ocean in Aveiro. We also have offices in Coimbra, where I work and live, and at the moment I'm working from home, as most of my colleagues. So the offices should resemble more or less like the pictures you're seeing. We focus on three major areas, and today the area that makes more sense to talk about is smart cities, since it comprises a lot of means of mobility and transportation, including micromobility, where we have worked since 2013, so for quite a while now. And smart cities do not involve only mobility; they have an impact in all cross of sectors, and we focus on several solutions, which I will explain later today. We do not work by ourselves, so we foster on partnerships with the partners like Ertico. We are also members of ETSI and AIoTI, BDVA, and other European associations. We leverage on European Commission funding and EU projects, just like the ones that e-Tricala so well presented. We leverage on that sort of projects to bring innovation from our small, medium-sized cities in Portugal all across the world. And we, in fact, have solutions running in more than 55 cities, and some of them focus exactly on micromobility, which was, in fact, the first one we launched in the scope of IoT and smart cities. So I would like to introduce you to Bike-in-Motion, one of our commercial products that we've launched from a research project funded with the European funds. And it's a fourth generation electrical bike sharing system. So essentially, as an end user, as a citizen, as a bicycle rider, you could unlock the bicycles with an RFID card or with a mobile application. You can see the docks availability. You could basically rent and lock the bikes as you wish. It was a dockless system, even though it could have docks for electrical vehicles charging. The bicycles were manufactured in Canada by Bewagen Technology. It was a partnership that lasted from 2014 to 2018, and this project allowed us to really scale our technology all across the other side of the ocean to the US and have a lot of the implementation pilots there. So we started, for instance, with a pilot in Wolfsburg in Germany with 50 bicycles, and a couple of months later we had 400 bicycles in several cities in the US. So it was a really matter of scale and making sure that it really worked in all sorts of environments. And the bicycles are very robust. They are traceable, so they have a GPS unit inside. They have the electronics to unlock and check the usage. And for us, the data collection and the data usage and optimizing the operations for the operators, not meaning to be redundant, was our goal. So whenever, for instance, in Wolfsburg, I always remember that there was one case when we had this refugee crisis in Europe, and one of the bicycles was taken away to one of those camps, and we were able to support the operator getting it back before being dismantled, which is one of the issues that we see nowadays with the e-scooters scattered all across the rivers and so on. So this is the sort of things we could support Bike-in-Motion. And with the success of it, we managed to get 3,000 bicycles all across the world, electrical, sustainable, robust, and making the transportation more sustainable. But this was not done by ourselves, so we relied on other partners within the joint venture of Bike in Motion. And one of those partners is an electronic producer with whom we started to work on other solutions. And we started to monitor, for instance, parking. They were developing electromagnetic sensors that monitor parking spaces occupancy and the entry points and exit points of parking areas. And on our side, it was the same type of technology. It was software solutions that collected this data through IoT platforms, so Internet of Things platforms. We did data collection, data analysis, and optimized the operations for parking operators, knowing which spots were the most popular ones, which ones should raise their pricing, and so on, and do this sort of analysis. For the end user, for the people, we support the process of finding vacant parking spaces, which if you own a car and you drive a car in urban environments, you know it's a pain point in any city, regardless of the size of the country, if you try to go to a popular place. And this kept evolving. So we started to monitor traffic and air quality, and we thought, well, if we are doing this and we have different solutions to monitor different domains, how can a city manage its whole ecosystem with different organizations, different operators, different entities? You've seen that e-Trikala has been implementing different pilots and different projects. Apologies for the background noise. Essentially, if e-Trikala needs to use different applications to manage everything, it's a challenge for them. And our proposal is exactly to aggregate everything in a single platform that supports decision makers for their operations. So making sure that data can come in real time from what's happening outside, within the community, within vehicles, devices, and applications for collection of feedback, and the city could have, and this is just one of the features I wanted to show, it's having a real-time status of what's going on. So if we think of micromobility, we could check the traffic usage of the e-bikes or e-scooters. We could check if there are any incidents with them, if there's someone gone missing. We could bring in the Bike in Motion experience of analyzing the docks usage and optimize the logistics operations and correlate this with other things. So instead of just following trends and implementing it because others are doing, in fact, assess how it affects the noise and the environmental emissions, the energy consumption, how it impacts the daily lives of the community, and check either if they are Greeks or Italians or Dutch or Portuguese or Americans, how they feel about these opportunities. So if we are unfamiliar with, if they are comfortable taking it to work, how they are used during different weather conditions, this is a sort of analysis we can do. Because all in all, we want to help cities become more sustainable and use data to take those decisions. So not just follow trends or indicators, have proper KPIs that benchmark their performance and follow best practices in terms of software implementation, IoT projects, and reaching the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the climate agreements and the Green Deal. So making sure that it's well-funded and well-founded decisions to make our lives better and with improved quality of life. So this is, in a nutshell, what I intended to talk. I didn't mean to take too much time with it. I know there's a lot of hot topics, and I'm really thankful for the opportunity of being here today. If I don't answer your question today, feel free to reach me on the email. I'll be more than happy to receive your feedback and questions afterwards, and we can schedule other opportunities to discuss. So thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Ertico and Decker, for organizing this, and feel free to pass to the Q&A now and discuss some interesting topics with the rest of the panelists.
No, thank you very much, Ricardo. That was very interesting. And of course, we will be sending to all the participants the link for this webinar afterwards, and also with your permission, of course, your presentations PDF and your contacts. Ricardo, we were together in a panel some weeks ago, and I remember listening the first time that I heard about the data that you collect from the micromobility vehicles, and how you are able to see real time the situation, this picture as we call it, on the network, and how you can use this and inform and advise the public authorities and the cities. And that is really really interesting. And I don't know if you're doing this only in Portugal or in other cities as well, but that is bringing me back to the question that I asked to Odysseas. If Trikala was ready, well, that's what Kerim mentioned, that many cities were not ready for the micromobility boom, let's say. Odysseas explained that they were ready and they are working on projects, so they're very much involved and using this co-creation and dialogue with the citizens and receiving information. My question to you is, how much, from your experience as UBWare, speaking to public authorities, how much the public authorities are ready to use this data to in their everyday traffic or mobility management? How do they actually, the cities, see the value of this data that you're holding from the micro mobility vehicles?
Absolutely. For instance, in my hometown, when we started to discuss with well, for your first question, yes, we are talking with cities all across Europe and the world. We are looking for opportunities to really scale internationally and keep up the good rhythm that the company has progressed so far. And we've seen similar challenges all across the cities. I mean, I'm not a fan of mentioning Trikala as a small city. It's a small giant. It's every city has the same challenges at different scales, and I think that they don't need to refer them as small or big. I mean, the challenges are the same, just at different scales. And for instance, one of the city where I live, they when one of the e-scooter providers started to pop up, and then they appeared just like mushrooms. That they are everywhere, which is good for the market market options. The city requested that they would have a clear two or three rules, as far as I know. So they would have speed limits within certain areas, and they would be forced that the vehicles would not overcome a certain level. In certain areas as well, typically in historical centers, they would be parking regulated, so they could not just be left anywhere on the sidewalk. They really need to be parked there. And the operator should provide the data to the city, not all the data, not the usage, not the private data, but the usage is as in a overview. And that's the sort of sensibility we're getting from cities. They need to have this overview of usage and these mobility patterns, and that's where we can help for sure from Bike-in-Motion and integration with these different operators.
They do, and it's true that the cities don't always have this data, and that's a problem. So can I ask a question to all of you, and I'll start with Kerim actually. So how can city authorities make micromobility a safe option on the road to travel short distances? How can the cities behave? And I'll ask you, Kerim, and then Odysseas, the city itself, and then again, Ricardo.
So I think a few of the topics that were mentioned already before. So I think it starts all with a database analysis of patterns, of mobility patterns, of how people are really using transportation. And of course, incorporating now the COVID-19 situation, how this might also be changing now. Because I think we all saw that there was a drop of 70 to 90% in terms of public transports throughout the different cities. The question will be, what is the new normal? So we will kind of simply come back to whatever was before, or will people simply don't want to go into buses and drive kind of very cozy together and sit next to each other? Or will they choose for the free riding of a bike, of a scooter, of whatever? But there, of course, also comes in the question then, do you feel well with sharing? Do you share a scooter, or do you want to own it? And kind of, if we also get a trend back there. Second thing, what cities need to do, in my eyes, is kind of transform the infrastructure, transform roads, and look into kind of additional solutions there. So today we have roads for cars, usually 2, 3. I have a background in Egypt. We do have 6 or 8 or 10 parts for cars, none for bikes. And certainly none for speedy bikes or scooters. Maybe this might also be an idea to add new speedy lanes, which are then for the e-scooter or e-bikes users. what you could do, and then infrastructure changes are very usually traditionally taking a long time. And I think this is something what we also realized in the micromobility industry. It simply hit the road very quick. So what I liked in the COVID-19 situation was many cities started putting up a pop-up bike lanes, so that they realized that there is a trend to more bikes. So they simply installed pop-ups really quick, so we don't wait until concrete is built, which takes too long. So also find smart ways of dealing with this as of now. Something which is quite closely in our DNA as a company, as DEKRA, is always inspecting the tools that you're using. So inspecting cars, inspecting bikes. It is a prerequisite to make sure that the technical health of the mobility device is there. So I don't see much yet periodical inspections of scooters based on usage, for example. What I mentioned earlier, I think this is something that cities need to speak up for and also introduce it. Major cause for accidents is of course the scooters are not in technical health. And last but not least, user behavior tracking. I think we have all the data. It is very easy to see how a user is driving his scooter, and don't leave that only to the scooter providers. So cities need to get the data, need to analyze it, like and deal with it. And I think everybody knows the rules. So why don't introduce it? And a thing that is difficult in Germany due to regulations is geofencing. I think also that is a nice alternative to make sure that you don't drive in areas you're not allowed to. It goes away, it goes into the freedom of choice, and so therefore it is a bit a moral issue there. But still, if you have the technical requirements to make sure nobody drives into a Christmas market in Trikala, then implement it. Why not?
Yeah, perfect. And that was a perfect way to go to Trikala.
Yes, true.
For an answer.
Okay, certainly yes. Let me share the dream. I told you before that the dream of the mayor is that to have in next decade the zero emissions city. It's impossible, all right? The whole city to be zero emission. But what the mayor and the vice mayor responsible for the micromobility, for mobility in general, they are thinking is to restrict to zones inside the city, in the downtown, of cars. This is the next project. We have to isolate areas that are, let's say, crowded and use only small electric vehicles. This is something that we are now discussing and we are including in our SAM. But the authorities, to be safe, I mean, according to, let's say, our experience, is that we have to define a more concrete institutional framework on it. It's very, very important, and we're working with the government on it. To stay off the footpaths, this is something that we're facing not with electric vehicles, we are facing that with bikes that are circulating the city. Since the feeling of bike, not owner, bike rider, is that he has a priority. He has not to obey to the signs. He can go to the one-way street from the other direction because he is environmentally friendly. He's not using his car. So we have to change it. To change it, we have to impose laws. I mean, we have to define new laws, laws that are, let's say, not very strict, but laws like in the motorbikes, like in the cars, like in the big vehicles, to be sure that everybody that is riding a bicycle, an e-bicycle or a bicycle or a small electric vehicle has to obey the rules. And then is the big issue that we're negotiating with not a big success in Greece is insurance. Insurance companies are not, they have not yet faced the issue. The vehicles are coming. The vehicles are inside our city. And there are not specific insurance policies for those new, for this new era of transportation. Of course, manufacturers are required to apply for let's say general operating permits and to standardize their products. As we heard before, that the big success is that the product is standardized, and then we have to think for pedestrians. We have to protect them. I mean, believe me that the only bad, let's say, memories, because the cars left last week from Trikala, but the bad memories are coming from pedestrians, are not respecting pedestrians. Not that pedestrians are respecting the light vehicles, but drivers are not respecting the pedestrians. Finally, the cities, by collecting data and providing data to all, let's say, the players of the new games that are coming on, is going to help a lot. It's going to assist to fill up and to form up a new policy, a new European policy that will adapt all the experience that we are trying to provide through all these projects that we are testing in our city and in other cities around the world today.
Odysseas, very interesting, and you are actually raising a point that I also tried to raise, but it was raised by Kerim about training and user behavior as part of the standard that Kerim or DEKRA has developed, this micromobility safety standard, and this training of users and this lack of respect between the pedestrians and the users, it's something, yeah, in some cultures they have a long experience, it's in the culture, and in others it is indeed an issue. But we are being bombarded with questions, but I have to turn the question to Ricardo because I promised. So Ricardo, again, the same question that we were sent. What do you think that how can city authorities make micromobility a safe option on the road to travel short distances? What is your advice?
Most has been said already, and I agree with the previous opinions from Kerim and Odysseas. And I think accessibility and safety are the two major concerns that come to my mind. So on the one hand, making the options accessible to all that might want to use the system, not necessarily only in terms of usability, but also in terms of payment methods, because everything is digital, everything is in a digital wallet, smartphone apps, and so on. And some end users might not have access to those. So we need to consider alternative means to make them scalable. And the accessibility, of course, of the devices, of the bikes, of the lanes that they have. So having proper lanes for the bikes and the scooters is a starting point, because then you can have traffic signs and regulation that guides them how to drive, how to ride there. And then the safety concerns about making sure that it's properly implemented, that people are aware of what the rules that they need to follow and the best practices. And I think that's mostly with training and rewarding mechanisms, and making people aware that if they leave the scooter in a specific place instead of leaving them at the front door, they will pay less, or they would get the reward for the next usage, or something like that. This is something that people start to embrace as good behavior, and start to implement it. And this way we can foster the best practices that we've been talking before.
Indeed. Yeah, respect is something that you learn. We have a question that says, would it make sense, or is it possible to have passive safety measures included in the micromobility vehicles? And I would ask DEKRA, because Kerim, you were talking about DEKRA and how I cannot hear you. I don't know if others can. So,
yes, I'm hearing you.
Yes. So shall I repeat the question? It's about passive safety and how this can be included in the micromobility services. And you have contributed with this safety standard, which is very interesting in all its aspects as you were showing it in the slide. And you were also talking about technology and design at some point. Right. So maybe this is where under where this passive safety falls.
So I do personally 100% expect this to be happening as we mature in this industry, because kind of the starting point of the industry was e-scooters are rather used as a toy, and not for industrialized usage. And I think we have already seen the first step up in that technological advancement of the scooters. So now that they're really rather capable of being used more than just maybe 2 months, and then they had to be thrown away. So what we see, and we did a lot of testing of different scooter providers or scooter manufacturers in the last couple of years. We have our testing center in the area of Dresden. So we also compared, and we see the increase of industrialization in those areas. So there will be a natural development towards rather safe scooter designs. Same also for the size of tires, for the usage of the steering, and of course also for additional safety measures. What we also see and also recommend, of course, is to use helmets. I think also that is not a standard requirement everywhere. It's kind of still, yeah, you can, but you don't have to. We do recommend it though. Even a lot of the providers put kind of pictures with helmets on their websites, though I rarely see them really actually providing them. You can get one for free if you assign, and then if you want to. But I do see the complexity of a sharing provider providing also helmets to share. And now taking COVID into consideration again, the complexity there is quite big. But I see good developments, and there's the one or the other provider that has good offers there. And so, of course, advocating for it. And it will increase safety for sure, but a lot of it is still depending on the user himself. And there I would like to see, again, the other stakeholders engaging in it, municipalities forcing it, providers offering it, and then users also liking to use it.
Excellent. A question for Odysseas. Do you have penalties for bad behavior about this lack of respect on the road? Well, not for cars, not for vehicles, for micromobility vehicles, so bicycles and so on.
Penalty to what? He has no registration plates. How the system can give a penalty to a vehicle that has no registration plates? This is a problem.
Excellent. Yeah.
Okay. And what Kevin said before, yes, we need minimum standards for these vehicles. And then probably we need a license. Somebody has to train passengers, has to train users. Why not a minimum license, and why not plates? Just to then to behave like a car, like a moped, like all these cars or let's say road equipments that are circulating our cities today.
Yeah, indeed.
No, we have not penalized nobody.
Okay, thank you, Odysseas. Ricardo, a question for you. So what are the challenges that micromobility is facing at the moment? And that moment now, as I'm reinterpreting this question, is during COVID times, when things are going to go either way, where Kerim was mentioning that e-scooters use drop down and it's expected to go back up. So what are your insight? What are your insights?
I think the major challenge is durability or longevity. I mean, we've seen them boom a couple of months back, and even before the pandemic, at least in my current ecosystem, some of them have gone away, just disappeared from one night to another. And I think this is the major challenge, because even it could be as a pilot, and I mean, if it disappeared, it meant that it wasn't being used as the operator was expecting, and it just took it off. But I think that's the major challenge, making the thing last. And it might be depending on a lot of things that we've been talking before, a lot of regulation and proper safety conditions that foster this adoption at scale. But until then, I think this is the major issue, because some countries might be ready for bicycles and people are used to it, but that's not the reality in every city, in every region. And these electrical vehicles surpass some of the challenges that traditional bicycles impose, since you need to be fit to go up some streets, and the engine helps you on that. So these are more, they have more scalability in terms of implementation, and being so lightweight and friendly to use, and everyone seems to enjoy them when using them. They have a good potential, but the major issue is to make sure that they endure throughout long periods of time without facing vandalism so much, without causing concerns to the community, and having a reliable business model that supports them financially.
Indeed, indeed. But I was in one of our discussions with our partners in our event we held last week. All of you were there, and it was being mentioned that the micromobility vehicles are lightweight, and therefore endurance and longevity is not really the focus there, because if it were, they would have been more expensive to buy, provide, operate, and so on and so forth. So maybe that's the point. I have a last question. It's about, yeah, thank you. That was the point that also I found very interesting about this gender gap. Have you seen it? Do you are you working with it? And it's very much as I was saying about the perception of safety, but also risky traffic environments. It's also the weather. It's summer, and we are all discussing happily about micromobility vehicles. And in the winter, some countries have it worse than the others, and it's not easy to be using this vehicle. So combination of gender gap being the focus and also weather conditions. Kerim, the question is for you.
Well, I cannot say much really reliable on data on if there is really a gender gap. It would just be my personal hearsay and what I hear. So I cannot say, just of course, but there are usually early adopters in these kind of new technology fields. So if I just look into what I saw in August 2018 in Los Angeles, it was quite closely, I would say, to the surfer community. So those are the ones kind of getting off the surfboard, taking the scooter and riding home on Santa Monica Beach. And that was also what inspired me to do it, because I'm not a surfer, but I felt like this could be an easy one for me to adapt myself to. But I saw also with talking with the different scooter providers that they are already foreseeing different scenarios and different use cases. So it's not just this one size fits all solution, which is from a commercial standpoint obviously very interesting, but they do look into different user groups, different personas, different use cases, going to shopping, not going to shopping, just taking the scooter to go for a drink and then take a taxi home. So they elaborating on this. The only thing that might be the big obstacle for them, and I'm not 100% agreeing with what you said about the light vehicles, that they're not made for, that they shouldn't be done for endurance, is that there is a commercial side of things as well. And I think Ricardo knows that quite well. So you need a high usage, you need a high endurance, otherwise you cannot provide those scooters on a market, and simply you run out of money. And if you look into the current scene of consolidation in micromobility world, Zurich going together with Bird or being acquired, Lime getting into turmoil with their latest investments. So it's simply also a commercial part of things. So we cannot kind of look at it only from sustainability and safety reasons. So there might be some commercial reasons also for taking bold decisions here.
Excellent, great. Well, we have only 1 minute, and what I always do with my panelists, I ask them to go for one word on micromobility. Each of you has one word on micromobility for the future of. So I would ask Odysseas to give us his one word for micromobility. Yes, the future. Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Thank you. Ricardo.
Safety.
Safety. And Kerim.
Opportunity.
Opportunity for all. Excellent. Fantastic. This is great. It's 4:30 and we have to close the webinar. It has been a very interesting discussion. Thank you to the participants that were really active and sending us the questions. And thank you for the very
Joanna, you're off.
Yes, it wasn't.
We lost Joanna.
Yeah.
It's 4:30, so we lost her.
Last word.
Okay, so Odysseas, do you want to do the honor?
Thank you very, very much for the honor to be, let's say, replacing Joanna. That is not possible. But thanks very, very much to the audience that have been together with us to our effort to improve micromobility. This is a huge effort that has started today, and I believe that very, very fast in the future is going to explode. Thank you very much, Kerim. Thank you very, very much, Ricardo. And we all thank Joanna for organizing that, and of course, Ertico for inviting us and all the attendees. Thank you.
Well
Perfect.
said. Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye, guys. It was nice. It was a pleasure. Bye-bye.